Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. I am Orhan Mc Millan with Manfulness Living, and I'm excited today to bring my friend Dr. Chris Reidel on the show with me. And he and I have known each other quite a while. So Chris was an early kind of adopter of the Manfulness Living program whenever I started it after he moved here from the upstate New York area. And after we got to talking and things, we connected so powerfully on so many levels. And so after participating in many of the programs, on anxiety, at stress, et cetera, one thing I realized, he and I were talking the other day, and I never really addressed pain and physical pain, chronic pain as it relates to us. And that's one of the things he specializes in. So he agreed to come in today. And so we're just going to spend some time talking about the medical side of pain, the ways that pain shows up in our bodies, the effects it has inside of our bodies. And of course, obviously going to talk about how mindfulness practices works with a lot of the things that he does in his treatments for his patients. So welcome, Chris. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Good. I can't be bad on a day like this. This is like one of 5 days, being in Louisiana. Now, you from upstate New York area, y'all get really great springs and summers, and but 4 days.
Yeah. I don't know. I would say that the weather down here is probably a little bit better sustainably.
Over the long term, yes.
Yeah. It's just you during December and stuff, you get 5 days of gray, but then you get a beautiful sunny 70-degree day. Whereas in upstate New York, you just have months and months of dreariness. And then you get a beautiful May, June, July, August. Yeah. And then August is hot, to be honest.
It is warm. With Paul being from upstate New York, we travel there quite a bit. But if you can catch that magic end of summer week, there's nothing like it anywhere else. And so,
summer, the spring, June, and the summer nights are pretty awesome up there.
Awesome. So, Chris, tell us a little bit about what you do and the kind of work that you do. And then, like I said, we're going to touch about some of the other things. But talk about you a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm a sports chiropractor. I kind of specialize in almost all musculoskeletal pain and conditions. So it could be, a lot of times people think about the chiropractor pertaining to just cracking the spine or whatever, which is the spinal manipulation. But what I do is I take a kind of different approach where I combine, of course, manual therapies like the chiropractic manipulation. But we take it, chiropractors, we have to go to school for 4 years after undergrad. One of the things that differentiates us, we have to do a lot of diagnostic training. So it's taking an injury, it could be the knee, it could be the foot, could be the shoulder, and figuring out what is causing that pain. And then figuring out what are the best ways to treat it, whether it is manual therapy or exercise or activity modification. So it's teaching people how to manage their own pain and how to kind of fix themselves, I guess, is the philosophy I try to take. And we help facilitate that with our hands, which differentiates us from a lot of professions.
Gotcha. So specifically, as we were kind of talking about this, with the Manfulness group, it's focused on men. That was kind of the thing, say a space for men, et cetera, like that. What do you find with your patients? Is there a difference in the pain they come in and they're dealing with as far as gender goes, because you work with all genders, or is it just kind of the same stuff, but there's a different process that follows through as they're going through it?
I think there are certainly differences. I think sometimes it's hard to say exactly. You do get a lot more young girls dealing with a lot of stress. I do feel like a lot of times there's kind of the archetype of the type A female personality with like really tension in their neck and stuff like that, where a lot of it is anxiety driven. But it certainly happens frequently with men. I think it's just not as common, and there's a lot of variables that could just be because men aren't seeking care as frequently. It could just be as simple as that. So it's kind of hard to say completely, because there's a lot of but I mean,
one of the things that we kind of discover as guys in general, we're not quick to talk about things like that. I mean, it's just not something that's like, okay, I got this pain, I'm going to kind of push through it, mush through it, et cetera. And possibly, and I don't know this, but possibly that when it really gets to a point that it's either unmanageable, really shows up in a effective way in our lives, that then we're like, oh yeah, got a problem. as opposed to being a little bit more aware of our bodies and our systems and things like that. And, being okay with saying, hey, I'm feeling this. What is this?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I 100% agree. I think a lot of times guys take the opinion of, oh, it's going to get better. It's going to get better in a couple of days. And they kind of keep leaving it. And they kind of like, I find that guys tend to be the ones that kind of pick at it. They keep picking at it, trying to fix it themselves in a way. And a lot of times they're doing a little bit more damage than good because, they're doing a bunch of things. They're constantly attacking it. Whereas a lot of times, and I don't like to generalize too much, but a lot of times I feel like women are more likely the ones that'll come get it taken care of. I mean, I've had plenty of patients where the guy's only seeing me because his wife told him to. So that certainly is a thing, but there's always variability there, I guess.
Well, that was the way it was with me. 2014, I started having these pains in my chest, right? I mean, it was like when I would breathe, like literally breathe, like it ain't nothing. It's nothing. Yeah. It's nothing. It's just I pulled something. Finally, it got to the point that it was like, this hurts. And so the next thing you know, there's a tumor and, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. So, it'd been there a while.
Yeah. And I think some guys also, it's the way we perceive it and what we do on a daily basis, because you have a lot of guys that are just used to hurting. If you talk about a lot of guys doing a lot of manual labor, stuff like that, their pain threshold is pretty high, and their experiences are a lot different too. Like their bodies kind of always hurt, but their expectations from me are different. They're just like, man, this is now a 10 out of 10. I'm used to a 5 out of 10 pain. It's okay if it hurts. Like, my neck might only move this far, but that's fine.
Well, and then, as I get older, I'm starting to hear these things. It's like, oh yeah, you're going to start noticing getting out of bed, et cetera, like that. And, I hear that, but I don't quite necessarily agree with that. I believe there's things I can do on this end of all of that so that I don't suffer from the typical joint pain, et cetera. And I think a lot of that is part of what you do. I mean, yes, they can come to you with pain, but you do a lot of preventative work too, don't you? Or it is possible for people to come to you for preventative work.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it's tough when you talk about prevention of pain because it's the research is kind of mixed and stuff like that. Because at the simplest level, it could just be educating someone that they need to get 8 hours of sleep and they need to move and they need to take breaks and they need to do all these things to kind of give their body a chance to go. But we certainly also take a situation where I will do a musculoskeletal screen and I'll say like, hey, your right hip doesn't move as much as your left hip. And that certainly has a higher chance of causing some problems in the future. I try not to word things like that because I don't want somebody to think just because their right hip doesn't move that they're going to have pain, because I think that can cause a negative effect. But it's like, hey, if you're interested in this, like it would be beneficial for you to get your right hip moving more, like this is something you've been neglecting, or side to side core strength, or there's certainly a lot of areas. And then also just getting the joints moving and getting stretched out. And it never hurts, you go see a dentist, you see a lot of these providers and you just ask them questions. And I think sometimes just having somebody that you see and that you can ask a lot of questions about musculoskeletal health, like, how do I exercise this? How do I train this? How do I stretch this? How do I, because we all have little things that bother us throughout a day. So it never hurts to have somebody to just talk to about it.
Well, that surprised me. The first time I went and saw you, I went just out of curiosity, really, because I've always been a super supporter of chiropractic medicine. I've always been a super supporter and understander of those things that understand the body as a whole. But really what was even more surprising for me was whenever we were doing that, there was something, I forget what specifically, but you said, yeah, your right leg is a little bit lower than your left leg, the way your hip joint is. And now let's talk about things that you can do to balance those things out. And it was stretching exercises. Now, ask me if I've done them. Well, that's a different conversation. Yeah. But nevertheless, I was surprised at that part of what you do in being able to assess the movement, I would say, the overall process and flow of the body itself.
Yeah, it's kind of a tricky dynamic because you want to talk to people about a lot of those things preventively, but you also do want to make sure somebody doesn't think like, oh, my hips are uneven, so I'm going to hurt. And finding that.
Cut them legs off right now because I have no hope for the future.
Yeah, exactly. We see that a lot with imaging too.
Do you? Okay, all right. Yeah. And so the stuff you're able to do with that is to be able to advise and recommend and give advice on what people can do, individuals can do to work with what they have and to improve their overall motor skills.
Yeah. The goal is to educate people on how their body works and what they can do to kind of help themselves and help themselves not hurt. So it could be as simple as, of course, we see anything from a desk jockey all the way to a professional athlete. So everybody has different needs, but a lot of times it's just figuring out what can somebody do, because if you sit at a desk for 8 hours in a day, why wouldn't you hurt a little bit at the end of that day? Or if you go run marathons, of course, that's a huge demand on the body, all of these things. But what are some things you can do to give your body just some love, to
Yeah.
give your body what it wants? And, sometimes, for instance, me, like after a long week, if I've been really busy, I'll be tired, I'll be sore. And there's certain exercises I can do that just make me feel great afterwards. And it could just be like some light side planks, it could be. So there's a lot of variability there, but the goal is to teach people how to help themselves and how to achieve, whatever their goals are, I guess, without being dependent on us healthcare providers.
Absolutely. And that so much of that language that you just used is so much of what the mindfulness practices are about: awareness, being, listening to yourself, being able to have that space where you hear and feel and understand those things, because that's what it is. It's by doing those simple things. And like we talked about, you and I talk about this all the time, the simple, small things, that it does allow you to know what a more natural flow to your system is. And then also the great thing is to be aware, or have the awareness of when something's not right, or when something feels a little bit different, as opposed to just plowing through.
Yeah. And I think that's where it is really important to talk about what is your body saying? But I compare almost every single time, I compare pain to a relationship. Sometimes and there's different types of pain, right? You have chronic pain versus acute pain. It's like, oh, somebody sits there, they trip over themselves, they sprain their ankle swells up, and that hurts. That would be more acute pain or short-term pain, versus chronic pain where somebody's been suffering with low back pain for 30 years. But a lot of times I sit there and it's about that relationship with their body that I work on, right? If you sprain your ankle is obviously screaming at you, you did something to it and it needs to be taken care of, versus chronic pain is a little bit of a different conversation. To be had, because that means a lot of times the nervous system and the pain system is actually out of whack, which is where mindfulness and things like that can come.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And like you yourself, you play rugby, right? So you're out there, that's very contact sports.
Not anymore.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, new
Yeah,
news. Announcement flash. I'm gonna put. If I knew how to put the announcements across the bottom, I was gonna say when you played rugby before.
I played rugby throughout chiropractic school, but when I moved to Baton Rouge, I stopped playing.
Gotcha. But when you were doing that, that's a lot of physical exertion, right? I mean, it's obviously a lot. It's a contact sports. It's a high demand contact sport. And then now that you're in a office like medical setting, et cetera, then your body is experiencing different parts of stress and strenuous, et cetera.
Yeah, absolutely. And most injuries are can be broken down to too much, too soon, or too different, right? So
okay, you got to repeat that: too much, too soon, and too different.
Yes, you see a situation where somebody switches from doing yoga to heavy squats. The body was adapted to yoga for 20 years, and then they're trying to do heavy squats, and the body doesn't adapt that quicker. You see it a lot right now with people like teachers. Teachers are used to moving around. They're used to walking around the classroom. They're used to all this stuff. And then all of a sudden they got put in a situation where they were sitting at a desk glued to a computer for 8 hours without the ability to take a break and go to the bathroom. So that's a huge time where I saw a lot of teachers coming in, because that hurts. That hurts to go from moving all the time to sitting. And so that transition can cause a lot of pain as well. And listening to your body will tell you like, hey, I need to move. And a lot of times we don't listen to that.
Well, and as you know, that's one of the things that whether it's meditation, that word brings a lot of different emotions and reactions and from different people. So mindfulness is kind of a little bit safer word, but it's all the same thing. I mean, it's kind of relaxing into a present moment scenario, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, etc. It really does make a difference in being aware of, I need to get up and move right now. Or I don't need to get up and move right now, but I'm feeling a little bit different. This is what I need in this moment. I need to stand up. I need to go get some tea. I need to walk. I need to get some water. Things like that. Like you said, right now under our current home life work environments, a lot of us are still doing what I'm doing right now, and it is sitting behind a computer. Where before, like when I was at my physical office, I man, I know I walk. I mean, I just got up. I've always been that kind of guy. I'd go do something, go walk into a space. I find myself sitting a lot more now. And so, but being aware of that and having the understanding of, okay, now that I'm sitting more, keep an eye on the clock. I just need to get up and go walk outside. I need to get up and just stretch the legs, etc.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, I've seen it go the other direction sometimes, where people that are home are actually more mindful while they're at home because they're not stuck in that work environment where they can like get up and go for a walk. Maybe they can take a meeting call on the phone while they walk around the neighborhood. But yeah, that's really what it comes down to. I kind of compare. Sometimes I break things down pretty simply for people, and I say, treat every tissue in your body like it's a relationship. And your muscles, they want to be loaded. Your joints want to be moved. All these things want to happen. It's like a corporate environment. If somebody's being overworked, they're going to hurt, and if somebody's being underworked, they're going to hurt. Right? You want to
affect the overall system as an organism itself, as an entity. Great example there. It's not running at its possible maximum fulfillment and efficiency by having those imbalances in there. That's really a great way of explaining that, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of times you see it with the knee. Like if the hip muscles aren't doing the job right, the knee will start to hurt. And it's really because the hips aren't doing the job, or the core or something like that, or even the foot muscles or the shoulder blades. The shoulder blades are kind of one of the big areas that don't do their job as well, where you see the rotator cuff somebody tears the rotator cuff, but it's because their shoulder blades aren't helping. So the rotator cuff has to do all the work. It gets inflamed, it gets angry. And then, over time, because we neglect it or ignore it, it starts to literally fat cells will go into the tendon because the tendon's not getting loaded appropriately. And then that is called like a degenerated tendon or tendinopathy. And then eventually it'll start tearing a little bit.
Oh, wow.
You get these issues. Now, we're also very resilient, though, because on the other side of things, if that same person has that tearing in their tendon, they've shown that if, people have torn tendons and they have full strength. And so if you give your body what it needs, it can actually react and overcome and become stronger than it would be. It's just about creating that connection and working, I guess, would be.
Absolutely. So let's move a little bit more about the pain, the mentality, because you do a lot of studying, you do a lot of research, a lot of things. A lot of times, a lot of the conversations you'll talk about that quite a bit, just in even our casual conversations, things that you've read, et cetera. So like the mindset of pain, as it relates in the mind, body, et cetera. Talk a little bit about just anything that you've come across recently that's kind of, you're like, wow, this is kind of interesting about how the research and the development of us understanding pain has come so far where we are right now today.
Yeah, I think it's important to break down to the beginning, right? We back in the 1980s, we would sit there and we just take an image, and then we would be like, oh, here's a normal spine, here's your spine, yours looks terrible, you're doomed. Okay. But one of the dynamics is now we're starting to get more into what's called the biopsychosocial model, where we're starting to implement more than it's not just all biomechanics. It doesn't necessarily mean just because somebody has a disc bulge that they're going to hurt. So with that, you get into kind of the acute versus chronic pain, where like if you tear your ankle, when you tear your ankle or roll your ankle, something like that, that needs to be healed. That needs to be rested and then moved. The problem comes with pain is sometimes we apply that acute care. Like if I roll my ankle, I probably shouldn't do things that hurt it.
Okay.
We apply that model a lot of times towards chronic pain, where somebody's shoulder hurts for 7 months and every time they reach overhead, it hurts. So they stop doing it and they don't do it at all. And then their brain actually learns that pain and it anticipates it. Just like kind of Pavlov's dog, you pull out the steak and the dog salivates. All of a sudden, you ring the bell, pull out the steak, dog salivates. All of a sudden, the dog will salivate just from ringing the bell.
Right.
There might not actually be tissue damage. The tissue might have actually healed, but because you've gone through that experience of reaching overhead, that every time it hurts, now your brain learned that that's the thing. Or
you've trained your brain to do that, and so therefore you're already going to ahead of that. You're not going to even do that. You're going to stop doing that because, like you said, you've trained your brain to expect this reaction or this feeling from making that movement.
Your body literally learns pain.
Yes,
and the nerves actually get more efficient, more effective. It's almost like that shoulder has a bat phone, and that shoulder just every single time you move it, the shoulder's like no. Your brain is an instant connection. Meanwhile, your left shoulder might be the one that actually has more problems, right? You see that a lot with somebody who hurt themselves in high school, where their right shoulder is actually stronger than their left.
Right.
you know, and I feel it with myself. Like if I ever get worked on, my left shoulder is actually way more tender than my right. And I hurt my right shoulder playing rugby. So it's kind of funny the way our brain creates that connection, and we lose trust in
Yeah.
that shoulder, and we lose all these things, and all of a sudden we're like, I have a shoulder problem, and it,
Right.
yeah,
And exactly. And again, that's I keep tying that back to, by doing some regular mindful practices,
yeah,
whether my favorite is the morning. It really is. Sometimes it's, you and I have a standing Wednesday group meeting that we're in. I don't have as much time to do it in the morning on
yeah,
Wednesdays because, I love my sleep. But whether it's 1 minute, 5 minutes, it's not necessarily that I've done it every day and I missed it and I suck, or that I'm doing it. I do enjoy mornings. I mean, they just kind of set my day. They set that. And again, it's not some magnificent overdrawn thing that I do.
yeah,
I go sit down.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
and the more you do it, it's amazing. From the time it's so amazing the things you become aware of. It's like
yeah,
I just woke up, I'm rested, and the next thing I know, my brain has launched into.
yeah. All the
And so then I'll go sit after, whatever my morning routine is and stuff. And part of that is that. And I slow it all back down again. And it's almost like I have to reset
yeah,
from the time I wake up.
yeah,
And then in that body scan, where you at today? Okay, this feels a little odd today. Recently, I haven't been able to do nearly what I normally do with like my yoga and my exercise, as just because of scheduling and moving and all of that kind of stuff. I feel it. I feel the difference of it. So just in the awareness of that, I'm
yeah.
putting less expectation on the body, knowing that in probably about 2 weeks, I'll slowly get back into those routines. These areas will start to soften up.
Yeah, and I think so. As I was kind of breaking down those different progressions, it's that chronic pain or that
Uh-huh.
learning pain. So that's the pain that starts to spread a lot of the time, where you start to like your life starts to get dominated by pain, and you start to, all of a sudden other areas start to hurt, and that actually can be called central sensitization, where you have a situation where your body actually starts to learn that pain. So that's where mindfulness and chronic. Now, of course, there's different levels of chronic pain, and talk about fibromyalgia and a lot of
Right.
these diseases that cause it, CRPS. And so the way I look at a lot of these though is it's about becoming aware of the way the body is working, right? So, and that comes into where mindfulness is at play, is when you're talking about chronic pain, is because a lot of the situation is that the tissue damage does not match the pain you're experiencing.
Okay.
And a
Okay.
lot of times people think that um, that it does, and so they're scared to move it. And so a lot of times the mindfulness aspect is sitting there and taking a look at your pain and
Mhm.
realizing what it is. So if you realize that it's not necessarily a tissue damage and that it's actually an oversensitized situation, or you can actually look at it from an outwards lens and kind of accept what it is. Like, can my shoulder still do this? And all
Right.
of a sudden you realize someone that can military press 40 pounds is considering, surgical interventions or something like that. And well, why are they? It's because they're taking the pain kind of out of context. Like my shoulder still does everything that it can do. And so a lot of times that mindfulness, whether it's through, because there's a lot of, I think that exercise provides a form of mindfulness for the body because it allows you to feel your tissue more.
Yes.
Also perceiving, just thinking about the pain, like, well, why is my body hurting?
Yeah.
And
Yes,
yeah,
in a reflective way and a non-reactive way. Because if I do this, it hurts. I'm reacting. I'm going to react. This is coming down. I'm gonna have feeling whatever it is I do. But if I could do it in a reflective way, where I'm thinking about it but not experiencing it, that allows me a different opportunity to look at it.
yeah,
And what stands out to me was something you just said, was how in those moments of kind of just sitting with it, it may come that, okay, it's not as bad. So I'm gonna see if the words come right to me, that I'm now deflating what I thought the pain was, and maybe it's not as bad as I thought, which then may lead me to come to you, as opposed to, this is just hurts too much. This must be more than anything. I'm not going to do anything like that. Either I'm going to take a medical supplement to just do this, when none of that is really necessary, if that makes
yeah,
any sense.
yeah, absolutely. It's Chronic pain is such a crazy topic because all this stuff is so new. I mean, it's honestly been 20 years since we've really been going into it.
Yeah.
Created fibromyalgia, and just that term, I mean, if I remember right, the diagnosis of it is just like if you can find like 28 trigger points and document them. And I mean, if I prod anyone with my thumbs, I can make that most of those areas are going to hurt. So it's really, they aren't really sure the cause of this stuff, and they don't know much about it. But what they're learning is that mindfulness, like perception of mindfulness, like if somebody is more mindful, their perception of pain will be less. They're showing that mindfulness is one of the best treatments for a lot of these chronic pain conditions. And because when you sit there and you look at pain and you let it dominate you, then it will dominate you. You're going to lose that battle. But if you start to put, like I always say, treat the pain, well, specifically if we're talking about chronic pain, this is, treat the pain like it's there, but it's not your primary. It's kind of a guider. But if your shoulder can do everything you want it to do, the problem is a lot of times we let it dominate our life. So it's like, oh, I love horseback riding, but I can't because of the pain.
Interesting.
So a lot of times it's about showing your body that you can do that. Now, that doesn't mean going horseback riding for 18 hours because you're going to be miserable.
Right.
Maybe going for 30 minutes and seeing how it feels. If the pain doesn't change, and realistically, a lot of times with a chronic pain situation, we actually want them to hurt a little bit more while they're doing it. But then they realize that after they finish the exercise, it doesn't get any worse. You know, a 1, 2, 3 increase in pain while you're going through the exercise or while you're horseback riding or while you're doing what you love is perfectly fine. You're not doing damage to your body. It's when you get to a 4, 5, 6, 7, or you're getting numbness and tingling down your leg. Of course, then you need to stop. But it's about educating that and showing people, hey, I can do this, and focusing on the function rather than the pain. And the problem with ever since the 80s is like the first question you go to the doctor on a scale of 0 to 10, how much is the pain? And the first thing they focus on is the pain. And that becomes the most important thing rather than what can I do? Can I live my life? So that's kind of the goal with a lot of chronic pain patients is to get them strength training because that's a natural way that they can see, I can do this. Or get them doing cardiovascular exercise. I can do, like getting them to feel their body, but it also creates that body awareness and that tissue awareness that we're talking about that just mindfulness in general helps out with.
There's so much in there. There is, with the awareness, with the ability to do it, with recognizing where I am with it, being present with it, being practical with it, practicing it, not letting, because that's one thing that we all know is that if we let this go amok, it runs amok. And it's what it does. I mean, it's part of how the operating system works. And that's one of the things that's why I believe in this and I do this and I'm sitting here talking about this is I know that it can be reversed because I was the amok guy. It was just all over the place. And just by doing that, it just slows things down. It declutters this. Even when this gets cluttered or struck or triggered, I'm now able to know I've been struck. This isn't, just go ahead and go with the flow. You got some adrenaline going right now. Whatever it is that's happening, go with that. You're going to come back down to it, and then you'll be able to assess, what it is. Beekeeping, right? So a little side story for me. So I kept bees for a while, a few years back. Didn't go very well. They would sting you. It hurts, right? Bee stings hurt to some degree. And several of them at one time hurts a little bit more. Well, I just got back into it, not even 6 months ago. And now this is after a good year and a half without, or I had one, but I didn't even touch it because I was like, okay, these things will sting me and they hurt. After having practiced steady mindfulness, it relates to pain. I was setting up a new hive and I was like, okay, I want to try this. So I had the gear on, pulled the thing, and bees don't come at you. They just really don't. But there was this one, I aggravated the heck out of this one. It stung me. Now I sat there with that and being mindful about it, it hurt less. And I know that sounds weird. It hurt less than what I remember it hurting before. And I know I could feel it right then and there. And then the other part that I learned is that when someone gets stung like that, our bodies set off a pheromone that then they pick up on. And then that's whenever it sets the alarm, right? It sets the alarm in the hive. And so as I did that, I noticed I kept my breathing. I was like, I really went internal with it, and nobody came. In other words, I was like, oh, wow,
Yeah.
I'm setting off the pheromone of fear, panic, whatever, that this one is picking up on, because this one's going to die. This one, this one is sending the bat signal back. You mentioned that a minute ago. But just in that practice, and it was really kind of cool. I was like,
Yeah.
all right.
Well, because you think about it, you're in a way with mindfulness, and the physiology and the mechanisms of it are so complex. So we're talking about the brain, right?
The brain.
But it's like if you're talking, oh, my body learned pain. Well, how do you unlearn it other than mindfulness, right? Well, some of the things I was mentioning earlier, but the mindfulness is really how you're going to try to rewire the, like, how much does this hurt? How much of it is anticipatory, right? Because when they do little studies where if they right? I think there's some fancy YouTube videos where if somebody sits there and like they show you a lighter, right? And you close your eyes and then they put an ice cube to your finger, you think you got burnt.
Yeah.
So much of this is anticipatory. And so when you practice mindfulness on a regular basis, you're trying to create that awareness and almost control your nervous system and try to calm it.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And understand it, I think, is the other big one. It's just understanding your nervous system and understanding that stuff and understanding what the pain is. Like, that can go a long way.
Absolutely. Well, see, that's honestly where you play a valuable role, is understanding how those circuits work, right? Because I mean, you do this daily, you educate yourself on it, and so that would be a benefit for someone that is your patient or whatever, because it's going to allow them an inside look to something that I'm not going to look at that. I'm not going to study that. But in my head, it allows another pathway to understand what's happening in my body. And it has, and this has to be. So if you have a patient that has this, that's experiencing this, and you're able to help them understand clearly what's happening here, that brings awareness to them and gives them a space to come at it again from, or to understand what's happening with them when they experience that reaction or that feeling again.
Yeah, absolutely. And understanding what is good pain versus bad pain, and understanding that, like, not everything you're experiencing is. Yeah. So in psych, you have the term, back when I was getting my undergrad in that, they have the endless stream of consciousness, where your body, right now you don't feel it, but now I mention your shoes and all of a sudden you feel your shoes, right? And they're not on your brain.
Thinking about my shoes earlier.
Oh, really?
Shoes, right? No, seriously, I get it. My brain went shoes. Okay, I'm feeling it right now. Yes.
Yeah, now you all of a sudden feel it. Well, the way your body learns pain all of a sudden is, it's just like if somebody followed you, it's like, feel your shoes, feel your shoes, feel your shoes, feel your shoes, feel your shoes for 3 months.
Shoes. Right.
But like all of a sudden you take off your shoes and what happens? So a lot of times mindfulness is actually like you tapping into, or this is one way I look at it, is you tapping into that endless stream of consciousness and just listening to the signals that are being put in your brain, rather than just letting your standard brain just pick out what's most important.
You're not letting the brain decide. You're deciding. You're running the brain. The brain's not running you, because you're going to get those thoughts. And what I'm hearing you say is you get to be selective, because you can find a space to say, okay, that one, this one, okay, go on with this. This doesn't seem right. This doesn't feel right, as opposed to running on the roller coaster with all those thoughts.
Yeah, it's like if you're focusing on that one area of pain, right? If I sit there and have knee pain, I'm constantly focusing on it. It's the same thing as if your significant other chews with their mouth open, and chewing with your mouth open is never good. But if your significant other has a tick that bothers you, right, and you keep paying attention to it, all you focus on is that tick that bothers you.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's like what's happening in your body. Sometimes you got to just stop focusing on that, and you need to start experiencing the other sensations that are going on in your body, because that one might not be a good, or it might not be a productive feeling. It's, especially if you've had it for a long time, it might actually be detrimental, because your body learned to focus on that pain rather than focusing on what you can do.
Okay, I'm gonna start sounding like a sadomasochist now when I tell you about this that happened the other day. So I also like cooking, right? So I was reaching the oven, grabbed something, burnt. Yes, like you could hear it. I was like, okay.
So good pain.
Huh?
Good pain.
Yes.
Well,
And I was like, all right, so this is hurting. So but again, in that mindfulness kind of thing, I was like, all right, yes, it's burnt. It hurts.
Mhm.
But how long am I going to focus on that? Right. And so again, you said think about something differently almost. So you think about something outside of. I noticed that I was able to feel less long term burn, right? Than what I know has happened in the past, sticking it under the ice, all these other things. I was able to come back from it quicker, not to say that I'm going to start burning myself.
Yeah.
This really sounded bad. Because the next thing I'm going to do is go stab myself and see how far that. But it is those just instant. I realize those are external, pain inflicting on my
Yeah.
body outside of me.
So to bring into that question though, why did it hurt when you touched the stove?
Yes.
It hurt when you touch the stove because your body is telling you not to do that.
Yes.
Right? Because if you kept your finger there, what would happen?
It would hurt more.
It would hurt more, but you would get burnt. You would start to get your burn.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
More and more. Sorry. You will get more and more tissue damage as you kept it there. But that doesn't mean that you did a ton of tissue damage when you first pulled off. It was your body's warning signal, don't do that.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Problem is, so that's a healthy form of your body being protected. Because if we didn't have pain, we would all just be running around doing terrible things.
Oh my gosh. Yes, absolutely.
But it's also beneficial. I mean, that's a whole other topic. I'm sorry, I need some water, long day. But if you only focus on that kind of a situation, sometimes that pain can actually make you stronger.
Absolutely. Well, and that's what I know you experience with that, because again, if that's where my brain is focused on, if that's what I'm thinking about from the time I wake up and all of that, then that's exactly what I'm going to experience and stuff. And so that's what a lot of the mindfulness is able to do there. So like right now, you're thinking about the itch in your throat, right? Yes, that you should have gotten water, right?
The fact that I didn't put water next to my computer before starting this, yeah.
Right. And usually as a host, I'm always like, remember, have a glass of water handy. And but yeah, so it is that. So I guess another thing, as we got a little bit more time, then we're going to wrap up and everything. But so as it relates, because again, you focus on the physical body, the nervous system, how the muscle skeletal system.
Yeah.
What would you advise just for general people for a good maintenance thing? Just general tips of just ways to begin.
Yeah.
To become aware of physical body motion, etc. Because that's a lot what you do is around motion.
Yeah. So I guess I'd like to say, I'll just say like a couple things. The first thing, if we're talking about this stuff, because we didn't even really get a chance to go into how anxiety and stress and all those things actually increase pain, which is part of the biopsychosocial model as well. But I mean, I guess I'll bring it all together, because if you think about the standard human being right now, they're not getting 8 hours of sleep. Bam, your body's going to be inflamed. You're going to hurt. You're going to be, when your body's inflamed, you have a higher chance of suffering from if you're inflamed, you're going to hurt, and you're going to be depressed, and you're going to be stressed, and you're going to be all those things. So, the biggest thing, get 8 hours of sleep, drink your water, eat well, because all those things are going to lead to your body not being as inflamed. It'll be less painful, but it'll also just everything's going to feel better. But the big thing is, you think about all these people, okay, they're doing all those things. They're not sleeping well. They're all stressed. Their cortisol is through the roof. Then all of a sudden they're sitting at a desk for 8 hours a day. They're not exercising, which is why exercise has such good results pertaining to pain reduction, because it's a natural way for your body to move. It's like a scheduled, this person's going to give their muscles load. It's going to give their joints movement. It's going to do all these things. So if you think about, okay, person sitting at their desk for 8 hours a day, they're in the same posture. My biggest thing would be like, just find ways to get moving every 45 minutes. You don't have to go do the standard gym routine.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we learned that with the pandemic. I mean, I think a lot of people discovered that the walking thing, or the stepping outside, you don't have to go do that, as you were saying. Yeah. Right?
If you go for a walk, and if you give your muscles just some form of, you probably need to give them some form of load, which could be applied with some sort of weight training. But that doesn't mean you have to go to the gym and break yourself into a miserable sweat. Now, is that really beneficial for the people that do it? Absolutely. And I'm not telling
no, absolutely
not to do that. But for a person that's not the solution for their problem, they go for a walk, go for a couple walks, right? 10,000 steps could be one 3-mile walk, or it could be a couple, laps every couple hours. Get moving, reach up Move
Right there. I mean, reach up, do something different with your mobility, your range of motion.
Yeah, I always say if you're doing something all the time, do the opposite. That's what we need to do. So if you're not moving, then you're
again. Say that because hold on, don't skip to that because that's pretty good.
If you're doing something all day, you need to do the opposite. So like I'll never tell somebody that's been sitting all day to go, well, biking's better than nothing, but they should probably do something standing, like a walking or or running or whatnot. So if you're doing something all day, like give your body what it needs, and you can tell that by feeling it out. Like even just, when you talk about bringing mindfulness into it, it's just like visualize, like what you're doing every Wednesday morning is you're waking up and you're just kind of moving and feeling it, each joint, and like feeling it and like bringing attention to it and seeing how it's doing, but you're going to move it. So by doing that, just like when you stand up, just going through movement, a lot of what I do is just teach people how their body moves and what it should feel like and what it will feel like. But a lot of times we neglect it and then it just goes into alarm phase. And sadly, a lot of the patients I see are just in alarm phase where they've neglected it, and then it's screaming at them. It's like I always say, it's like, all of a sudden that relationship is no longer healthy. The significant other has contempt. And so that's a lot harder. And that's
chewing with your mouth open all day long. Now you just irritate me.
Yeah, exactly.
And now whether you're even eating, I still see you chewing eating with your mouth open. You may not have a food within a mile of you, but that's all I see, right?
Yeah, well, think about it. How many times does somebody get home from work and their significant other, they're expecting them to say something. They're expecting them to be mad about something, and they're having a fight with themselves in the car while they're on the way there. Before the other person's even angry, and then the other person's like the other person's like, oh, how was it? And then it's like, it was good.
Or the other one's like, whoa, who just showed up at the door? I've been relaxing and stretching, and I'm in a good, but anyway, it's homeostasis, and that's a whole different, a whole different conversation for us. Yeah, but you're right, it does do that. And that's one thing I've learned just, with the pandemic and things like that, because I would go to the gym every day and all of that. And then I've noticed even when I'm in Baton Rouge of just taking a dog, even if it's just down the street and back, it makes a difference. Yeah. And I'm just talking physically. I'm not even talking about what it does mentally and just and anxiety and stress. Because I do we're going to do a round 2 of this on stress and anxiety as it relates to pain, because that's a whole different one there in itself. But just by getting out 8 minutes, some days I go longer, some days I don't. Some days I'll do some push-ups or sit-ups or something, or just like you said, I know that I sit. So what is it I can do to counterbalance the sitting that I've done for 4 hours or 5 hours that day during the time that I'm not sitting? Yeah.
And taking a third party look at your pain or at your body, not in a way where you're judging it. Take the judgment out of it. It's got to be a judgment-free zone, like Planet Fitness, or I think that's
I'm gonna go a judgment, and I'm gonna set an assumptive. Don't assume every single time that you revisit it that's the same, because I heard you say that. I love that when you did that with the shoulder and you referenced that. Don't assume going into it that you're gonna have the same reaction day in and day out, because then you're training your mind to expect it and you stopped it. So
Exactly. So when you take that step out, it's just like, how can you make it just, how can you take a third party look at your life or something like that? Your desk. Like if you take a look at yourself at that desk for 8 hours, your interpretation of that environment is going to be different than being the person that's staring at the desk. So that's also why it's so important to go for a walk, get off your cell phones, to just take time where your brain can be bored and like kind of process the information of the day. That's why it's so important to get in nature. Like nature is, they've shown that nature is one of just getting out.
Oh my Lord.
Decreases depression scores. Now, it doesn't mean it fixes, and of course, depression is a really complex topic in itself, but it can help, right? All these things can help, and that's why they're so important, because it takes you out of your element and it forces you into that objective perspective, because we just get so stuck in our lives and we get so stuck in our pain. We get so stuck in the day-to-day draw that we miss out on the present. We miss in everything that's going on around it.
Wow, you're in charge. So now you're in charge of, man. I couldn't even have said that better. I don't even know if I could have said that better. That's exactly what it is. And another thing I've been noticing with me is I observe more now, pandemic, of I wasn't segmenting my day. I was going one to the other to the other. Oh, this call is done. I'm finished with this meeting, with this interview with Chris. I'm going to go do this and this, that, and the other. I've now been able to what I call segment and tend to say, I'm finished with that. Like when I'm done with this with you, I'm not jumping into something else. I will go walk outside. I go refresh my water or something like that. Taking many breaks in between all the things that could get done in the day, but it's like pausing and slowing those down and breaking in between them. I get more done. I feel better. And at the same time, as I'm moving, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I must have sat like the way I'm sitting right now with one leg, etc. I can feel it. So I'm going to go move that part, but it's just slowing down a little bit just to be aware.
And let your body talk to you, let your mind talk to you. And I think that's a huge aspect of it as well, right? And a lot of times we don't give ourselves any actual downtime. You know what? Oh, our relaxation is looking at our phone. And a lot of times we know that those algorithms are being pressed to either aggravate us or at least keep our attention. And so,
absolutely.
You know,
phones are not relaxation, people. Phones are not relaxation.
Yeah,
relaxation about them.
Yeah, sometimes our brains, I mean, that's a whole other thing, but we just need to take that step back and process the information and process our body, you know, if we're talking about pain, and give it a break. You know, when's the last time you've given your body something that it wants? Right? You know, just even stretching it. I mean, I can't say it enough. Just going outside, like yoga is good. Just any sort of movement, and it doesn't have to be the stereotypical one that you see in the media. It could be any way. You can just get out and move. Just go walk. You know, you don't need to feel that. Now, of course, that has benefits in itself, like pushing yourself to stress and things like that.
Absolutely. That's in the case of what we're talking about right now. That's not where. But here's what I know to be true. You start with what you're talking about. You will then realize what your body wants next. Your body don't want that right now, and don't jump into that.
And that's a too much too soon conversation.
Go ahead.
I was saying that's the too much too soon conversation a lot of times for people. Get out, get moving, you know.
Just get up out the chair.
And maybe find something that you like to do. You know, sometimes it's all like, you know, I need to work out. Well, you're not doing that. And that's clearly not the solution at this stage. Maybe go, what do you like to do? Do you like to fish? Do you like to golf? Do you like to do any of these things?
Right.
Go find them. Go for a hike. Go do something.
What's in your environment right now, you know, because don't say, okay, I got to go to the gym, blah, blah, blah. Use it, whatever's in your home environment, your outside environment, use those tools that are there to take that first step. Because before long, like you said, you're going to listen to your body. Your body's going to speak to you. Your mind's going to speak to you in a clear way. Then you're going to know what the natural next step is, and the natural next step is.
Go outside and play fetch with your dog, you know, even something like that. Like, it gets you moving and it's fun. It's entertaining.
Exactly.
You know, and just a little bit of it, you know, you can play some sports with your kids. You know, be mindful, you know, you don't want to do too much. You might not be, you know, trying to be LeBron.
Everybody calm down. Everybody calm down. I want to go one more thing, because this really stood out to me. You're saying, and I can't quote it, but do something different that you don't during the day, or what was that like?
So it's if you're doing something all day, you probably need to do the opposite.
That's it. So if you're sitting, just be like right now, whoever's listening or whoever goes back. So let me ask that. So would it be, let me think about how my body is positioned 50% of the day. You know, me sitting in a chair. Okay, think about that. And then think about things that I can do to counterbalance that. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So, I mean, and I would actually make the argument that most of us are doing one specific posture for way more than 50% of the day. It's probably upwards of 90 where we're in that posture. And that doesn't mean, you know, there's all sorts of arguments over good posture, bad posture. But the thing is, if you're in one, the reason all the people, you know, almost every rehab person is like, all right, I feel like this, do the chin tuck and do some back strengthening and stretch out your chest. And, you know, it's just all these things are there, you know, oh, I've been sitting all day. Well, maybe I need to lay on my stomach to change that arch in my spine, like the McKenzie technique, or, you know, it's what am I doing, you know, all day? And my body needs if I'm sitting all day, my body probably needs the opposite, unless of course you want your body to adapt to the sitting posture, and then it's probably going to fuse into that posture and you're going to be walking around with that intense kyphosis. And
well, and that's like we see with kids now. I mean, the spines. We're gonna be walking around with curved spines because of that smart device, et cetera. But yeah, that's again a whole different baby steps, right? We're not going to solve it all today.
We will not.
I think I felt the needle move a little bit. Did you notice a minute ago? I moved. But like, hey, look, he's sitting and talking. I adjusted my spine. I adjusted my back. I've seen this device where you can like wear it. It's like a strap or something like that. Because I know where my body is. I mean, I know you can feel it through the day. Shoulders start doing this, back and things like that. So.
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily mean. I mean. There's some arguments over there. It doesn't necessarily mean that this is like the end of the world posture and that you're doomed to have pain if you get into it. I mean, I'm not sitting with perfect posture right now. It's just if you're not moving, you're probably gonna hurt. And then I do think that it's probably better to have that better posture. But guys that are standing with military cadets get pain when they stand all day too. With perfect at ease posture. So there's not necessarily a perfect posture other than movement.
Right. I agree. And I think one of the things is, and you said this early on, it's one of the things you do is you listen to the individual, you work with people to understand how their body is. My body's not your body, and no one else's. My day is not like yours. And there's no similarities, but I mean, there's no commonalities to the point that they were identical. So don't even try to think that that's how to solve it. Figure out where you are with it, and that is where the mindfulness comes in. That is where the practicing of what you talk about. You just begin to listen. I love how you said that third party listening to your body. To have a third party way of looking at things with your body. You got some good ones there, Ann. I'm gonna start hashtagging and quoting those.
Yeah. In a non-expected way. You can't expect. You have to look at it from a completely blank slate. Rather than you can't look at it from a third party perspective and be judging yourself and being like, oh, I'm terribly and my posture is terrible. And but it's looking at it from that perspective and seeing like, wow, I really need to move. It.
Well, Chris, I appreciate your time today. I hope this was of value to you. I hope it was of value to the people that were listening or that are going to watch and listen and stuff like that. It's always a pleasure. I admire a lot about you. And I look forward to next. We're going to circle back and do another one of these. And I would like to focus on the anxiety and stress aspect related to pain, because that's a lot.
That is a lot. And I meant to get into it a little bit more, but sometimes I just.
Well, and it's me too, like I said, but it just gives us a reason for part 2.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, man, you take care of yourself. Be well. And again, third party, non-judgmental way of looking at yourself, and, do something different with your body that you've been doing majority of the day.
Yeah.
That's it. All right. Thank you. Take care. Talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Talk to you soon.